light within our hearts, light within our thoughts, light within our words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. With me today on the show, I have my friend Eric Breault, who is the owner practitioner, I guess, of Quantum Tones Healing. There are all sorts of spaces within human society that are characterized by uncertainty. Everything's in transition. Everything's in the process of becoming something or evolving. And yet within those spaces, in order to get them to function well, to be empowering to everybody around them, there needs to be some sort of accountability, some way of saying whether or not someone is doing their job, or of coming to a consensus perhaps of what the job of that particular place is. Some of that requires interpersonal communication within the local or perhaps even national community. Some of that is being clear with each other about what the expectations are and what the responsibilities are. If we have accountability, to me it seems that we are able to trust that person. They're accountable to do a good job, so we trust them to do a good job. If they refuse to be accountable, that to me is the first suggestion that maybe I shouldn't trust them. And of course, alongside of all of that, you have people who were in positions where they should have been held accountable, but they weren't, and so suddenly we find we can't trust them anymore. There are a lot of people today, for example, who don't trust the government because too many things have been done in the government's name for which people were not held accountable when they should have been.
Yes, if you're not held accountable, you're not taking responsibility of what you, having awareness of what you've done.
Ideally, if an individual takes responsibility, the community doesn't need to hold them accountable because they're already holding themselves accountable.
Yeah,
but if they don't hold themselves accountable, is it appropriate that the community hold them responsible, that hold them accountable?
Yeah, and it's important to be held accountable because it just makes you realize that, okay, this is what I've done, and I need to redirect that energy and that flow and make sure I trust in what I do. I made a mistake and I'm going to do it this way this time. I will honor what has taken place. It's okay. I thank the universe for showing me what isn't right for me, being held accountable for others.
In a sense, if someone in a position of political leadership, just for example, behaves in a way that is reprehensible and the community does not hold them accountable, it's as if the community has abandoned their pursuit of spiritual growth and is failing to nurture this person in a virtuous and desirable fashion. If you let someone get away with something that's wrong, you are abandoning them just when what they need is someone to guide their spiritual development.
Yeah, and the same with working with children. If you don't hold them accountable for what their actions, what they do, specific behaviors or actions,
So
how they
provide no guidance.
No. They won't learn and grow, and
they won't develop the appropriate respect for authority.
Yeah.
And if there is no authority, then our world is teetering toward anarchy. And I understand that a lot of my pagan friends are very fond of anarchy and notions of anarchy, but I keep trying to help them understand that anarchy really only works when you have responsibility and self-discipline from within the person. Anarchy, as my pagan friends refer to it, refers to greater personal freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Anarchy in a societal sense refers to people abdicating and refraining from appropriate participation in their government. Not every country in the world is democratic, but even the ones who are not, the citizens have a certain way of participating in their social life. And if they don't do that, the life of that community or country or region becomes unsustainable.
You know, when it becomes unsustainable, it means that everything just collapses. And that lack of accountability will lead to communities that communities, cities, states, governments to just fall apart in a state of turmoil.
Well, and governments and churches and religious entities and even social clubs, they have a certain positive contribution to make. I understand that in many cases they're not making it as they should. That's a whole nother discussion. But they do have, ideally, a certain positive contribution to make. If the citizens aren't contributing, the social entity can't do its job in return. The individual needs to be nurtured by the community needs to be renewed by the individual. It's a very symbiotic relationship. You know, in the same way that plants breathe oxygen and we breathe carbon dioxide, we each need each other. These spaces are always going to be uncertain. Laws will always be written and rewritten and changed and amended and updated, and with theological understandings as well. Spiritual practices will evolve and develop and change and merge and be distinguished. It's an ongoing process. Within all of that, there still needs to be the accountability to say, or to become aware of whether the leadership is doing its job.
And so that accountability there, and it's just not doing their job without the help of others, expressing their opinions and telling them to make what they feel didn't work. This didn't work this way. Can we do it this way? You know what? And those, if you're not expressing your freedom of speech and showing them,
which doesn't exist in every country, but it does exist here in the United States.
And which is a good thing, which helps keep our government accountable.
Ideally, those who are being held accountable would want that information. Tell me how I'm coming across, because I don't know. Nobody in our national legislature knows how people in impoverished situations live, in my humble opinion. And I'm exaggerating when I say nobody. I imagine there are few who do. But if you have never visited them, corresponded with them, spoken with them, seen the places where the poor people are, in our national legislature, you go from an office with how many attendants and assistants to a limousine to carry you wherever you need to go, to an airplane to take you wherever you need to go. I've read of countries where the national legislature rides public transit. A small country, granted, but somebody told me in Switzerland there's no separation. If we didn't have congressional limousines, and if all the members of Congress had to ride the subway and the metropolitan buses and the public transit system, they would have to rub elbows with the common people every day of their life. And in so doing, they would know what was going on with people who did not have congressional privileges. If you've never seen them, never spoken to them, how do you know what their lives are, and how can you make good law for those people? But it's still uncertain because it's always changing and fluctuating.
It is always changing. It's just constant. So it's important to focus on the awareness of accountability and be aware, being self-aware, I did this. I need to be accountable. I need to just focus on something else. And being honest with yourself with accountability, and with others with their accountability, it helps that relationship flow between the teacher, the student, or the teacher, doctor, mother, and say, I did this. Is this a better way we can improve upon our existence here on this planet?
Well, sometimes I do things, and I mean it for the best, really I do, but I need the feedback to tell me whether or not my work is as good as I thought it was. I am willing to be held accountable for the quality of my work. If I fix something and it didn't stay fixed, then obviously I didn't do something right, or something else happened, and it's my responsibility to double check that and make sure that I did it correctly. And if I did do it correctly, what happened that it created another problem? To stay involved, to stay interactive.
And that open communication is a healthy thing, because having that open communication in that line of work, friendships, relationships, allows that energy to build, to grow. I had people at work that complain about somebody all the time, how they do this and that, and that person, they keep talking about it and then not helping this person at all, or helping themselves and helping that that open communication.
So at some point when someone is complaining about someone else, it may be good to say, have you told them all these things?
Yeah.
If you haven't told them, they may not actually know. If you have told them and they're not willing to listen and they're not willing to address it, well, I mean, if that's the case, then say, well, would you like me to go with you? And the three of us will talk about it together. And if three people are talking about this, and maybe we'll come to a consensus, and if the person still doesn't want to address it, either figuring out why they don't want to address it, or taking it to the next level and saying, we are all concerned about this.
That's where
we want something done.
Yeah, that's where the supervisor comes in.
Well, that's where it takes a whole village in order to nurture an individual.
Yeah.
Whether that individual is a child or an adult.
Yeah.
It takes a village.
And I've had people like that, not willing to change, not willing to listen. That's where the challenge comes in, where they're not willing to be accountable, how they're doing things, how it's hurting the environment that we're in, the kids, and as well as not respecting me or other people that's in the room, and are very stubborn and not willing.
Have they been asked directly in those situations, why are you choosing to be so unresponsive to others' dilemmas?
They have. I've heard that specific people who have asked them to, and they just blow up at them. And some people prefer just to, then that basically pushes people away. The energy dynamic, the community flow of the space.
So, but the problem at that point is you're enabling the problem and you're not resolving anything.
And people have gone to the supervisor, and the supervisor have sort of done, but it still gets repeated. But
and it's not to say that we're going to solve every problem all the time.
No.
But I'm still very leery of saying, I guess there's nothing more that can be done. We'll have to resign ourselves to this, because at that point we basically shift from empowering better solutions to enabling problematic ones. And when we become enablers, I mean, essentially we have no one to blame for the problem but ourselves.
And sometimes there are lessons in it. It is a lesson where certain things, it makes you realize the universe is telling you that it is important, is redirecting you to something better, a better space, a better environment, more flowing. Not all relationships are going to become...
Well, one of the things we haven't mentioned yet in relation to all this is timing.
Yeah.
Some people need time to process. And so between the time that they're given the information and the time when a response is enacted, for some people 5 minutes may be enough. For some people 2 weeks may be required.
Yeah.
The problem if you wait too long is that it gets forgotten, and the problem, whatever the particular problem is, becomes part of the wallpaper, where we begin to think of it as normal and forget that there was anything else or anything better.
Yeah.
I recall talking with a young woman once who described her mother as manic depressive, and this was many, many years ago, and so for whatever reason there wasn't the treatment options that would be available today. But she said that in her family, her and her siblings grew up with the understanding that when mother was feeling happy, they would start hiding food all over the house, because every 6 months mother would become depressed and unable to do anything, and all they had to live on until mother became happy again was the food that they'd hidden around the house. And I thought, what a bizarre way for a child to grow up. But it was all they knew. That was a way that the children devised to cope with an insane situation. We're trying to wrestle with these places of uncertainty: homes, churches, businesses, congressional halls. These are all uncertain spaces because everything's always fluctuating. But there needs to be a sort of accountability in order to keep it functional and to push it toward health as much as possible. Ideally, or one of the possible ideal answers, I guess, to that situation I just described would be for the village to gather around and inform the children, we will help you to cope with this situation. We will provide the support your mother needs during her times of depression, we will provide food and shelter and whatever you need for the children in the interim without deciding that the family has to be ripped apart and scattered to the four winds. You know, that there would be a way for the children who love their mother to remain in reasonable proximity while still getting their needs met.
Yeah, yeah.
Part of this, that when you look at humanity as a big human family, though, is deciding that every person matters, that there's no one who doesn't count, you know, which has been a big part of human history. Who doesn't count? The disabled, the elderly, certain races, certain religions, who doesn't count? Well, a person is a person is a person as far as I'm concerned. Everybody counts.
Everybody, even those who are very hateful, judgmental, angry, stubborn. We have to realize that they are there to teach us about who we are as well.
And at some point in time, we have been all of those.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, on occasion, I've been stubborn, I've been angry, I've been disagreeable, I've been all of those things. I'm not that way all the time, but neither are they.
We have to become basically becoming understanding and accepting where they are at their time in evolution and growth, and trusting that that they will do what is necessary for the betterment of who they are, and trusting that they become aware that there are things that they need to work with, and probably most of the time they are aware of it. It's just they're afraid to step in that vulnerable space that will allow them to become more open and trusting in themselves and others around them.
Well, drawing from biblical text, we get the witticism that perfect love casts out fear. If there is something they're afraid of, whether it's themselves or an uncertain future or whatever, the unconditional love of a community can drive that fear out.
It can working strength in numbers, bring that love together,
and making it unconditional.
Yeah, that pure bliss, unconditional love, and expressing it even when they're still not willing to listen. You just send it no matter what, and love your enemies the most. Those who are just acting evil to you, still send them blessings, send them love, send them, you know.
And I'm sure there are times when I have been perceived as someone's enemy because we had a particular point of disagreement and I did everything I could to help them, but when I reached my limit, I wasn't willing to be the whipping post. I wasn't willing to throw myself in front of the train for them, or whatever you want to call it, because it would have accomplished nothing. I wasn't willing to make myself the flotation device that they held onto while they were trying not to drown, because then I would drown. I wasn't willing to do things that were counterproductive, even though in the moment they thought that might help them.
Yeah.
Well, and I could see well enough that it wouldn't help them. That what they needed was something that I couldn't provide. And making me the sacrificial victim for them was not going to resolve anything. And consequently, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and give them the space they need to build a new answer.
Yeah. And sometimes it's
and that's a very uncertain space.
When you step back, it helps you, but as well as helps them process whatever it is and whatever you need to process at their own time. And
at their own pace, in their own way.
You don't end up draining each other out. Taking all the energy out between each other and having that like constant battle. Sometimes you have to pick your battles with people. You have to say, okay, I have to step back.
Well, and that's respecting your own limitations.
Yeah.
You know, to recognize I do not have the energy to fight every battle. I don't have the resources. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time.
No.
I can't fight every battle.
It's important to take care of the self.
I was teaching someone how to ski once. And I explained everything I could think of in as much detail as possible, and finally said, okay, and now I'm leaving, and you get to practice all this, because the longer I stand here and try to repeat what I've already said, the more you're going to sit there and not learn it. And so I had to get myself out of the way so that they had nothing but themselves and the skis and the snow to embrace the difficult process of learning.
Yep, sometimes letting them learn from their own selves and their own mistakes, it will be the best It's like a mother and child.
As long as I was willing to provide a distraction, they never got around to trying.
Yep. It's like a mother and child with you know, the child is going to college, and she tells the child specific things, guidelines. She gives how to, because her experience in college, so she shared that. But the child is going out on his or her own, and they go through the challenges of either partying too much and not learning.
And lo and behold, the college that Mom and Dad went through is not the same college that I went through.
No.
Things have changed radically in that time.
Yeah, and so it just, sometimes they have to learn. It's living to learn. And yes, it's different, but when it comes to them partying too much or doing things and not educating themselves, and the parents have done it and they end up getting a low grade and it hurts their GPA.
Everything's interconnected.
Yeah.
And yes, more information is helpful.
Yeah.
But there's also all this discovery going on. But ultimately, you know, the thing I had to remember, you know, during my own undergraduate education was that I was the one who was going to have to live with the consequences. I was the one in that very uncertain situation that would unavoidably be held accountable by myself, by my own actions, by my own choices. It wasn't that someone else was holding me accountable. Life itself was going to hold me accountable by making me live with the consequences of my choices.
Yeah. We are all accountable, either good or bad, whatever it is, positive or negative. It could be certain actions that we are in positive accountability, taking that initiative in connecting who we are, that essence, through that positive. Because we are accountable in everything we do, every action, and it ripples outward, and that's where, whereas we stay focused on doing making sure that we are treating others around us with great respect, being honest with each other, and being responsible for what we do. So doing those necessary things, being accountable with those things, and trusting them, that energy, we will be able to work with others around us that they start reflecting us. When they see that when you do those things, others around the way look at that. Oh, this person is being honest, so I'm going to be honest. This person is being respectful, so it's like modeling that energy.
Well, and it winds up creating a more functional and healthy world.
Yes. Yeah. And
but that's where I often tell people that the only real security is in each other.
Yeah.
It's not in weapons or the military or government systems or bank accounts. Ultimately, the only thing we can really count on is each other.
Yeah.
When there's a hurricane or a tornado or the house burns down or whatever, for about 5 minutes, humanity remembers that all we really have is each other. And that as long as we can count on each other, no matter what it is, we're going to make it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for everything you shared today. Our time has flown away again, but hopefully we've given people some good things to think about. Thank you very much for watching.
you.